Monroe County Executive Adam Bello is holding another Zoom conference at this hour, this time with an update on the county's economic situation, and we'll take you there now.
And we wanted to take an opportunity today to update residents and the media here about economic development programs that Monroe County has created and the efforts that we've undertaken over the last several weeks to help those who are struggling in the county here as it relates to the impact from COVID-19. As we know that COVID-19 and prevalence here in our community has had a dramatic impact on the economic climate here. There's a lot of folks in our community who are struggling, and we put a lot of effort and resources into talking about how we can help and support individuals at home, whether it's through unemployment insurance benefits, SNAP benefits, and things of that nature. But we've also stepped up a number of efforts to help small businesses in our community as well be able to weather the storm and hopefully be able to come out on the other side, but also to give them the ability to take care of and support their employees and customers as well. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to highlight a few of those resources that are available to small businesses and large businesses as well in our community, and I wanted to bring Annalise and Lydia Burt with me as well today, so that we can answer questions that you may have about any of these programs, so that we can get more access and participation to many of these opportunities that are available to folks. So as just to provide an overview to get started, Monroe County has essentially 4 programs that we want to make everyone aware about. The first one is our Small Business Loan Program. The Small Business Loan Program offers $10,000 zero interest loans for working capital throughout the region. Now, working capital can be used for a whole host of issues, whole host of expenses, things like rent, utilities, payroll. It could also be used to purchase equipment for companies that have employees who now need to work from home and didn't need to work from home before, and they need to fund computer equipment and things like that for those employees. So it offers, again, it's a $10,000 zero interest working capital loan. Could also be used to pay for payroll. This program is being funded by the MCIDC as well as the Comita board. Each one of those boards was generous to invest $500,000 each for $1 million commitment to fund these small businesses. And so far, we've been able to process and approve 80 applications totaling around $800,000, putting that working capital back out into the community. In addition to that, because of the work of our federal partners, including Congressman Joe Morelli and his leadership in Washington, and Senator Chuck Schumer and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Monroe County is going to receive an additional $1 million in community development block grant funding that could also go to help supplement and support that small business or that business loan program. So again, they're still accepting applications into that program, and it's a really easy application process that we put in place, and the checks can be cut very quickly for this to help stand up a business who might be struggling right now. What we've also done is created a small business navigator program as well in the economic development department to be able to help businesses here locally be able to navigate all of the different programs that are available, because Monroe County has a number of programs, so does the state, and so does the federal government. And something that can be sometimes difficult for people to navigate, and this is on every end of things, whether it's human services, social service programs, right up through business loan programs, it can be very difficult sometimes to navigate what someone's eligible for, how to fill out applications, where to go. And so we've created a navigator program that businesses here can access to be able to help with those applications and get through the approval process. We've also worked with our partners at GRE, the Chamber of Commerce, and Rochester Works to create a jobs portal. We are very cognizant that there are a lot of folks who are out of work right now, but are able to work and want to work in one of the essential businesses that's still open and operating right now. But there's also a lot of essential businesses that are operating who are looking for employees. And so what we decided to do is work together as a team and collaborate to create a single portal where local businesses can sign up and register and offer jobs through that online portal. And individuals who are looking for work can go to that portal and try to find jobs and be connected in that way. So we try to put it all again in one spot. So it's a one-stop shop for residents here and businesses alike. And then also new today, just this morning, the Comida board approved an expansion of their sales and use tax exemption to include a number of sales and tax exemptions for businesses acquiring or installing machinery and equipment specifically to fight COVID-19 pandemic, as well as for the renovation and repair of existing facilities to accommodate the new equipment and installation. Those eligible will include any manufacturer, supplier, or distributor of PPE, that's the personal protective equipment we talk so often about, serving healthcare and medical providers, first responders, home health aides, patients or residents' personal use, medical and hospital equipment, disinfectants, sterilizers, and sanitation equipment, products and chemicals, as well as medicine and pharmaceutical products and over-the-counter drugs to be used in the treatment and prevention. So this is another great way of being able to support efforts of local manufacturers who are retooling their manufacturing processes and purchasing new equipment to be able to join the fight against COVID-19 when it comes to sanitation equipment, PPE, things like hand sanitizer of that nature. So I want to thank the Comida board for that approval this morning of the sales tax exemption. And I also want to thank the Comida board, the MCIDC, for their work in helping us create these programs and for funding particularly the small business loan program that is providing that working capital for businesses in our area. So I'm now going to turn this over to Anna Liss, our Director of Economic Development, who can talk a little bit about how to access these programs. And then Anna, Lydia, and I can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We announced the creation and the establishment of the small business loan program back in March, early on, I think, as we were trying to address this crisis. And we received an overwhelming response from the area business community. Initially, the IDC board had approved $500,000, and we quickly went through that fund, and the IDA board, Comida, was generous in kicking an additional $500,000. And Lydia Burr and her team have been working tirelessly around the clock to take these applications in, review them, and get back to these firms most immediately, and checks have been cut and are in mailboxes. By and large, these are service-based businesses, restaurants, salons, barbershops, hospitality industry firms, a lot of family-owned businesses, and the vast majority employ 15 or fewer employees. That being said, the loan program eligibility requirements are such that employers with up to 50 FTEs are eligible. So we believe that we're addressing a gap in the business community. These are entities that might otherwise not have the resources to apply for some of those federal programs that were announced. And of course, you may have seen the news yesterday that the PPP and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program through the CARES Act are no longer accepting applications at this time. So I'm happy that we are able to continue taking in applications. We don't have unlimited funds, but we do plan to work with our board to see how we can keep this loan program open throughout the remainder of this crisis. And we hope that that's not a terribly long time. With regards to the Business Resource Navigator, that link is directly available to you at the monroecounty.gov website, and it covers everything from the federal, state, and local programs and how-tos and FAQs, right down to there are private funds available. So Facebook and Amazon are two examples. They have grant programs available to businesses who are impacted by COVID-19. And those links and that information is up on the Resource Navigator page. And as additional information comes in, we're making sure that information is uploaded to that web page. Because as you're probably aware, regulations are changing on an hourly basis. Even with regard to this $1 million we're getting through CDBG, we're still not 100% clear on how we'll be allowed to use that. We have a good deal of guidance, but we aren't announcing that right away. I think that will become available to businesses in the month of May, so not too long from now. And then on the jobs portal front, we've seen a great deal of activity. I'll just give you some numbers. We had 239 job seekers register with that job board between March 1st and today. And it doesn't have, we're not able to look at statistics as to how many people submitted applications and for what jobs, but that gives you a sense of the activity. We added 231 new jobs to that site between March 1st and today. We have 48 different unique employers with jobs posted on the site as of today, and those positions are only posted for 2 weeks at a time, so these companies and positions were added to the site within a 2-week span. There were over 20,000 unique site visits to the job board over the last 2 days, and this URL is monroecounty.gov/works. Some examples of companies that are posting jobs: Wegmans has multiple positions, Spectrum, multiple positions, some packaging and manufacturing businesses, senior living and healthcare facilities. So all essential employers, essential industry sectors. And then finally, pertaining to the sales and use tax exemption program, this is an instance where this is already an incentive that we're able to provide to employers anyways, but we're expanding the scope of the program to include additional categories of products. And we're also able to waive the application fee. And that application is not live as of yet, but we'll make an announcement when it is. And I would like to now turn it over to Lydia, because Lydia is Lydia can speak in more technical terms about some of these programs. And she's been with the department for over 15 years, so she knows how they're structured. Lydia, I was hoping you could give some bullet points as to how we are envisioning rolling out the sales and use tax exemption program. Oh, unmute, sorry.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, County Executive Bello. Yeah, so it's an exciting opportunity for us. We've historically, based on cost structures, we've really seen projects that were only in excess of $50,000 come to the IDA board. And this will allow us to make available for companies as low as $10,000. And that includes racking and very simple things that are critical to their operation. We'll take applications, we'll review them quickly. The staff is very experienced in doing that. We'll respond and then prepare a cost-benefit analysis, a write-up for the board, and then get it right to the board for review and approval. They will need to be approved by the board prior to receiving the exemption. So the exemption is subject to board approval.
Great. Thank you, Leah. I appreciate that. And thank you, Annalise, for the update as well. So we can take any questions that reporters have. I think Julie here will manage that.
First up is Randy Gorman from WXXI, and then Dan Schreck from 13 WHAM will be next.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Question about the, it's interesting you guys are talking about how readily these small businesses are, obviously they're looking for a lifeline, and you've got all this money, dollars or whatever, for small business loans. I know the federal program, which ran out of money pretty quickly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think those were forgivable loans. I take it these are not forgivable. They will have to pay these back?
Correct. They are zero interest loans that can be paid back. The terms of payback are negotiable with the department and don't start that until next year.
And they'll still be attractive, do you think, even though they're not forgivable for these various businesses?
I hope so. I mean, the purpose behind these loans is that they're to help companies that think they're going to be able to come out of this and know they're going to come out of it. And we're hoping to work with them to do that and to create a plan for that, so that we can give them working capital now that they know they won't have to repay until next year with zero interest, so they can help pay their employees, pay rent. That was another big piece of this as well, so they can stay where they are, and helps out people. So it's injecting our own stimulus plan into the economy here for the county, but we're hoping this has a significant impact. And we've had a lot of applications for this. We've already approved. As Anna said earlier, about 80, I think between 70 and 80 applications have been approved. So the money is going out and is being put to good use by local businesses.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Randy. Dan Schreck from 13 WHAM, followed by Christian Garzone from WROC TV.
Thank you and good afternoon. County Executive, just to follow up on that question, when you say the terms of these loans are negotiable, what are the factors at play here? And are we talking we can negotiate a 2-year to a 10-year loan? Because a lot of these struggling businesses, while they do need this money now, they're also thinking about these losses they are going to have to live with and to deal with for a substantial amount of time.
Sure. And I can have Anna speak to maybe some more of the additional details of how those are being structured. But that's a concern that a lot of local businesses are facing, is how they can come out of this. Governments are facing the same thing in terms of revenue loss, and how do we come through this meeting our budgets as well. And it's a struggle. So I think that's why, we're still working with our federal and state partners who are injecting a lot of money into the economy right now through the PPP program, unemployment insurance, and whatnot. Those programs like PPP start to run low on funds. We're trying to step up our efforts on the other end to try to make sure there's still that access to that working capital.
Right, and I'll also lean on Lydia a little bit here with regard to the negotiation. What the program is couched as: repayment terms don't kick in until January 2021 over a period of 24 months. But for any negotiation that you want to have with our administrators. And Lydia, can you speak a little bit to how the flexibility? This, by and large, I want to give Lydia and her team credit. This was Lydia's brainchild. These are not taxpayer dollars. These are just money paid into the IDC and IDA accounts by area businesses in the form of fees and interest payments in exchange for tax incentives and other supports that they've received through county government over a period of many years. So, and we're statutorily required, empowered to use those funds to support the prosperity of the local economy. So we're not a business. We don't have to be greedy with this money. So Lydia, can you talk a little bit about the repayment piece and some of your thoughts and ideas?
Yes, Anna, thank you. So the loans are 0% interest, so it's essentially funny. We're entering into the agreements with a 2-year amortization, but we have absolute flexibility to extend that based on a business's requirements. So it's really advantageous for the bank's capital structure. And I think all our lending partners in the community understand that we are very willing to work with companies to be as flexible as possible to sustain their growth and sustain their existence. So we do have an SBA 504 portfolio that has provided us with a great basis for those relationships.
Thank you. And if I can, just one follow-up here, slightly off topic, and this goes to County Executive, your announcement on Monday that the county would begin citing non-essential businesses that were found to be operating. There have been reports of some places that have opened their doors in secret. I'm wondering, has the county fined any businesses that $1,000 that Governor Cuomo has allowed counties to do, municipalities to do?
Sure. Dan, that's a good question. I'm not aware of any fines that have been levied yet to date, but I can check in on that and we can get back to you, but I'm not aware of any yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Christian Garzone from WROC is next, followed by Natasha Ackrey from Spectrum News.
Hey, sir, how are you?
Good, Christian. How are you?
Pretty good. I had to step out for a second, so forgive me if it was asked, but you talk about the terms of payback being negotiable with the loans. Mm-hmm. Surely there's limitations in place at some level. They're not like Willy Wonka golden tickets. I mean, there's got to be something where you say, hey, got to cut it off here.
Yep. So Lydia had just talked a little bit about what that looks like, that there are a 24-month repayment, 0% interest with the repayment structure beginning in January of next year. But there is some flexibility built into that system to meet businesses' needs.
Gotcha. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is Natasha Ackrey, followed by Patty Singer from Minority Reporter.
Hi, yes, just out of curiosity, are there any restrictions or guidelines for what small businesses may qualify for this wonderful, loan that's been established?
I can speak to that if that's all right.
Yeah.
The only requirements are the businesses must have 50 or fewer full-time equivalent employees and must provide us with 2 quarters worth of New York 45s, which are tax forms that would indicate that these are businesses that have at least 1 or 2 employees. So sole proprietorships, if you're just one person working from home, that doesn't count. You have to have at least 1 employee, as well as provide us with a personal financial statement guarantee. So we're there's a great deal of trust here, but we're asking that businesses give us a sense of what their financial picture is, so that we're not giving a check to a business that already has $500,000 sitting in their bank account. We're giving the money to businesses that lack the resources and have the need at the moment. Does that answer your question, Natasha?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, Natasha?
I guess just in general, as we're hearing that the thought of reopening the economy, any in general words of advice for business owners in this time of uncertainty and as we move forward?
Sure, and I know this is an uncertain time, and this is new to everyone in the business community, or individuals or nonprofit world, and a lot of folks in the healthcare industry. And I know the governor just had a press conference today before this one, so I didn't get to see all the details released. But I know that there's a lot of conversations starting to be engaged with how and when do you start to reopen the economy in a broader way. And the right way to do this, and what we should be looking for, is a phased-in approach over time when we think it's safe to do so. The one thing I could tell you, though, is that I do not think Monroe County is out of the woods, as terms of the spread of COVID-19. We do see ourselves on that linear curve, as opposed to an exponential curve. So we're not seeing an apex like you would in New York City or some other cities around the country, but we are still seeing that daily growth of cases. Unfortunately, we're still losing people and having fatalities here in our county, and so we're still seeing that. And so we're by no means out of the woods. But I think what the next step conversation is then, how do you take the good work that we've done in social distancing, which has kept us on that linear curve and prevented the exponential curve? How do you now take that and be smart and thoughtful about phased in of how can you start to do more things safely without causing that spike? Because the problem is, if you do it too soon, and if you don't do it with enough thought into how you do it safely, we are a prime location to have a very dramatic second spike, because we just haven't had that infection rate and that spike that we've seen in other cities around the world. But the virus still is here, and we do have community. So you have those competing things, which is, we did a really good job with the social distancing to prevent that spread from overwhelming the healthcare system in the hospitals. So when you have conversations about field hospitals and things like that, we've actually done a very good job here. But that doesn't mean we have to stop social distancing, because then we'll see that second spike. So we'll be working very carefully. I'm glad to see that the states in the Northeast have put together a relationship to try to do this together, just like we in Monroe County have tried to do that, have been working very hard with our towns and villages, the business community, the nonprofit community, all the different sectors, to bring people together to do this together as a group. So not one person is off doing something alone. And I think that will be the approach. So look for a phased-in approach over time. But the other thing is, it's not 100% clear when that will happen yet, because we still are on that linear model, not on an exponential curve. So there's still going to be some time here, and we just need folks to continue doing what they're doing in terms of social distancing.
Thank you, Natasha. Patty Singer from Minority Reporter, followed by Sean Lehman from Democrat and Chronicle.
Hi. So when you talk about a phased approach, how would you do that? Because wouldn't business owners say, well, why is X business more important than my business? And then don't you create a sense of having more sort of people opening when they shouldn't be? And how do you say that a salon is more important than a movie theater, or a golf course is better than a pet store.
Well, and none of this is going to be perfect, Patty. So that's why, and that's what's troubling, because this has never happened before. So New York State New York State ESD has been working hard to try to manage what is essential, what's not essential, and start those conversations about phasing it in. But I do understand, and I think, we sympathize with the fact that it's not going to seem fair to a lot of people because we've never done it before. Mistakes will be made, and there will be judgment calls that are going to be made by the state related to what should or shouldn't open or how you do it. But my advice along has always been, we should listen to the public health professionals, and we should listen to what they think the safe way to open things back up is, because the one thing that I'm most concerned about preventing is an overwhelming the healthcare systems. We have better healthcare outcomes when the healthcare systems are able to manage the COVID-19 cases that we have. And so, right now our goal really is to prevent that spike in the overwhelming, and I would listen to our healthcare professionals and how they and their advice in handling that.
As a follow-up, I just want to be clear. So the zero interest negotiable terms, is that the small business loan, or is that the Comida? There are a lot of things were mentioned. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what are the criteria for which bucket of loans.
That's the $10,000 small business loan that's being powered right now by funding through Comida and MCIDC.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Patty. Sean Lehman from the Democrat and Chronicle, followed by Velvet Spicer from Rochester Business Journal.
Yes, good afternoon. On the sales tax exemption, can you tell me a little bit about when that program is going to start taking applications and how people can find out if they're eligible?
I can take that. Yes, we're going to begin taking applications next week as soon as we get the application up on our website. Unfortunately, we can't offer retroactive in sales and use tax exemption for applicants. So these have to be expenses that are incurred from, say, Monday or Tuesday of next week, or even today going forward. And we're establishing those terms right now. Lydia, can you speak to that in more technical terms so that I'm not missing anything? Unmute.
Yes, so our target, I think, is to start taking applications next week. We'll work through them. We encourage folks to reach out to the 753-2000 number with questions. We'll get right back to you. The applications will be on the county website. We will process them, and then they do need to go to the board for approval. And the next board meeting is May 19th, I believe. So that's when the sales tax exemptions will be effective. But we're able to talk to folks right now and start working through the process with them.
Thank you.
Excellent. And the follow-up, if I could, Adam, you talked about the budgetary pressures that businesses are facing, and you briefly alluded to pressures that governments are going to face as well. Anything you can share about how that looks now a month into the crisis and what your thinking is on that in terms of county government?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So that's a really good question and something we track carefully here. There's two ways to think about it. One, and there's two pressures on our budget as there are on everyone's. We have expenses and revenues. On the expense side, the federal government has made available to counties across the country money to help reimburse them for their costs associated with COVID-19. So Monroe County was made available $128 million to reimburse us for costs. So it'd be costs related to PPE, direct overtime, contract employees, things like that we're putting together. And we're actually still waiting for additional guidance from the Treasury Secretary on other ways that those funds can be spent, but that covers the expense side. So my concern is actually less on the expense side; it's more on the revenue side of our budget. We take in our revenue largely through property taxes, as everyone knows, sales tax, hotel motel tax. and mortgage tax, things like that. There's obviously going to be a dramatic decrease in our sales tax, mortgage tax, and hotel motel tax. The property tax is relatively stable, and it is not as it's not going to come and go with the economic condition over a month or two as much as a sales tax would. The New York State Association of Counties recently did a study on the sales tax dollars that said that even on the low end, we could be facing a $20 million shortfall on sales tax this year. So it's something that will obviously change as the year goes on. That was the initial report they just gave us, but it all depends on, I think, how we come out of this and what happens next. And that's a question that, to be fair and honest about, is we don't know. We don't know how long this will go, and we don't know what it will look like once the economy really starts humming again, whether or not some of that gets made up, or if that's a hole that we're looking at. I did talk to Congressman Morelli over the last several days. We talk every day, but he is co-sponsoring legislation in Congress right now that would allow revenue shortfalls to be counted and looked at as expenses for local governments, which would be very helpful and beneficial, because I think in the congressman's view, and certainly in my view as well, that if you have a revenue shortfall that is directly tied to this pandemic and COVID-19, that is in effect an expense, because county budgets are a little different than you see as federal budgets when you see those played out, in that county budgets have to balance. Your revenues and your expenses have to zero out at the bottom of the budget. And so as you're falling short on revenue, that's going to create problems on your expense side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Velvet Spicer from Rochester Business Journal, followed by Berkeley Green from WHEC. Velvet?
I'm so sorry, I had to step away for a second.
No problem. Hello.
Hi. I'm all set. I think I'm good to go.
Great. Thank you, Velvet.
All right, thank you.
We'll move on to you, Berkeley.
There you are.
I'm never going to miss an opportunity to ask a question.
Of course not.
I'm just kidding.
It's nice to see you.
You too. First, just a quick follow-up to the Association of Counties report. Is that 20 million shortfall for Monroe County or for all 62 counties?
Monroe County.
Okay. Adam, you addressed this multiple times. I've got it in my notes about reopening, but I did want to ask you as well.
Of course.
When you speak with Governor Cuomo, what do you tell him about reopening, particularly when it comes in terms of regions, like upstate reopening earlier than downstate?
Yeah, so we have these conversations all the time, and I speak to the governor's office frequently about this. And I think that the state, just like it was when we closed schools, and we had that conversation about what did it look like to close schools here versus to reopen, that conversation has to be the same way around the economy, because it's all related to public health concerns and how we prevent schools and how we prevent businesses from becoming vectors of the spread. So what happens is, in New York City, their experience is a little bit different. They experience the exponential curve. They're experiencing a peak. And so how they're going to approach opening businesses there is going to be a little different to here, because here we never really had that peak because we got in front of it with social distancing. We closed schools a little bit before the New York City area closed their schools, because we actually had evidence of community spread that touched a school here, if you recall, back in that first weekend. So we saw, the second we saw that community spread, we started to close things down here, and that was allowed to happen. That was before the rest of the state was allowed to do that, because we had those conversations that involved the school superintendents, the county executive, the county commissioner of public health, Dr. Mendoza, and the state. and that was a good relationship. And so I would imagine as it comes to then reopening, we would have those same conversations about, okay, what does the spread look like at that time? And then how safely can you phase that in? Because I know there's a lot of debate too and concern about school openings, because there was some disagreement between the federal and state governments and New York City. But here in Monroe County, we've actually had a really great collaboration when it comes to making those decisions, and those decisions are all made based on public health. So it's a difficult question to answer in the sense that we don't know when we're going to open up or exactly what that looks like. But my message has been consistent right from the first day of all of this when we had our first case, and I was on the phone with the governor's office that day as well, that our needs here, what we needed to do was close schools when we closed them, and we did. And then as we go forward, as it comes to reopening businesses, we'll have that conversation. But our experience here, like I said, is different than New York City's. It's different than some places from rural communities. It's more probably similar to Erie County and Onondaga. And so we could look to our partners. I speak to the Erie County executive quite frequently about what their experience is as well, because we're going to do things in a similar way. And when it comes to phasing in, that's a big piece of it. Is there's going to be some things that they even start talking today. What are lower risk versus higher risk types of things, and how do you manage masking and all those other things that go into reopening the economy? So it's got to be a phased-in approach, and my advocacy is always going to be for a regional approach to reopening, because our experience is going to be different than in other places. And that's among states too. I mean, you see that, New York State's experience is going to be different than Missouri's, which is going to be different than Texas. You're going to have a different experience in different places. So thank you all very much. We appreciate the opportunity to give you this update. Again, I do want to just get out there again information about how, if you have any questions at all about anything we discussed today, Monroe County has a COVID-19 hotline. It's 753-5555. Again, it's 753-5555. We also have a email address, covid19@monroecounty.gov. Again, it's covid19@monroecounty.gov. If you call or email, even if the person who answers the phone doesn't have an answer for you, we will get back to you. But you can call about anything related to service programs, financial programs, the business programs, access to food, any questions like that related to COVID-19. Again, it's 753-5555. And again, I want to just thank my partners at the Economic Development Department here, Annalise, Lydia Burr, all their teams, the Comita board, the MCIDC board, and then again, another special shout out to all our healthcare professionals, first responders, and essential workers who are out there putting themselves on the front line of this fight against COVID-19, and their families as well. And wish everyone the best, and remind us to continue our efforts to social distance and keep the curve low, and help our hospital system be able to manage the crisis that we're facing. So thank you all very much.
Mark Gruba in the News 8 studio. Monroe County Executive Adam Bello giving an update on the economic situation in Monroe County as it relates to businesses, opportunities for businesses, and those seeking employment as well amid the COVID-19 pandemic. We heard from the governor earlier as well. All of this and more recapped online at rochesterfirst.com.